Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carl Sawatsky. On behalf of CTC Train Canada, I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar, Building and Exploring Windows Server 2016 with Microsoft Azure. We're very happy to have everybody here with us today. We know that there's a lot of excitement with regards Windows Server 2016. What is it all about? And so today we're going to look at how we can use Azure as a tool to explore it. And we'll have a lot of very practical, interesting demos on how we can actually build that environment in Azure to fully explore all the new features of Windows Server 2016. So today, as a presenter, we have with us Lionel Shull. Lionel's one of our senior Microsoft certified instructors, courseware developers. He has over 20 years of experience, not just in teaching, but also as a consultant. So he has the experience in working with the technology and also in explaining how it all works. So we're very happy to have Lionel along with us today to guide us through this webinar. So we're looking forward to your questions, and in particular, we're looking forward to what Lionel has to say for us on how we can learn more about Windows Server 2016 with Microsoft Azure. So Lionel, I'll pass the word to you.
Thanks very much, Carl. So I'm just going to go over quickly what we're going to do today. So essentially, I'm just going to explain the basics of Azure and then show you how to set up an environment that you can just play around with Server 2016 in. I mean, this environment would be suitable for any operating system. We just picked Server 2016 because it's new, but anything you can build in Azure, you could use the same technique that I'm going to show you today. So let's just go through the slides here a little bit. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Azure, it's Microsoft's public cloud. Public cloud meaning it's accessible over the internet, and it provides three classes of services. So infrastructure as a service, and that's what we're going to do in this class. So we're going to build a server that's infrastructure, but it's also used a lot for other things. It's used as a platform for building applications. So platform as a service, for instance, if you wanted to build a database application or mobile web app, you wouldn't have to build any of the underlying infrastructure. You could just set up a platform as a service. You could set up a database, for instance. You wouldn't have to worry about the underlying server. You wouldn't have to patch the server, all that sort of thing. So Azure is a platform, and also it provides software as a service. So it can be used as software as a service. So an example of software as a service could be Azure Active Directory, for instance, or Salesforce.com, or in the case of Microsoft, Office 365. That's an example of software as a service. That's Office 365 is actually hosted on Azure. And the reason people are interested in public clouds, or one of the reasons, is they're elastic in nature, which means that they can scale up when there's a demand, and then they return back to the previous configuration when that demand subsides. So you only pay for what you need that way. And you can actually automate the whole process. So if you have like a web application, for instance, it could scale up. So you could have multiple front-end servers, and they would scale up. And then when the load goes down, then it would scale itself back down. So in order to get started with Azure, you need a subscription, and you need to sign up for that. We'll show you how to do that in a sec. And once you sign up, you become a tenant in Azure. So Azure is, I mean, there's many tenants. Every customer on Azure is a tenant, and essentially, it's your tenant information is stored in Azure Active Directory. It's like a big flat. It's a directory service, but it's flat. There's no organizational units or anything like that. However, you only see what's in your subscription. So your subscription is tied to your tenant, and you'll only see that. If you have multiple subscriptions, each with a different tenant, then you would see multiple tenants, but you're not going to see anybody else's. Privacy is preserved. So to manage Azure, you go to the portal. It's portal.azure.com. And what we're going to do, so there's two different models. There was an older model, they call it classic mode now. It's Azure Service Manager, or ASM. The new model started around 2014. And that's what I'm going to use today. And basically what you do is you create what's called a resource group, and then all the objects related to what you're trying to do, you can just group as a resource group. It's easier to track. It's easier to track your billings that way because in Azure it's a subscription service, so it makes it easier to track your billings. Also to do delegation, like administrative delegation, you do by resource group. So it just makes it easier. So we'll use the Azure Resource Manager, which is portal.azure.com, and I'll bring that up in a sec. And this is, if you guys want to do this, I mean, what I'm going to show you today, you guys can easily do on your own. So if you're into doing this on your own, this is how you'll do it. You'll go, what I recommend is create an email account specifically for this purpose. Don't use it for anything else. So to do that, you can just create a Microsoft account, go to outlook.com, create an email account, record username and password, and then to get your free trial, I think it's 30 days, or it's 30 days, or I'm not sure how much it is US these days. It's at least $100 US, or 30 days, whichever you use up first, and you get a free trial. And you can, if you want to, you can always turn into a subscription. But the way we're going to do it with the free pass is you will supply credit card number. They won't charge you, they just use it for identification purposes. And the free trial is what it shows on the slide, https://azure.microsoft.com/English United States free. Or you can just search it on any website. So, but have your outlook.com username and password ready. That'll be, it will use that account to set up a primary account within Azure. So what I'm going to show you guys today is basically how to go setting up all the different objects you need for a virtual machine. So in a resource group, so we mentioned that you have a resource group. So you have to have a resource group, and then you have to create what's called a virtual network. So virtual networks, this is the way networking works in Azure, and it does what's called network virtualization, generic routing encapsulation. And what that, it sounds fancy, but what that allows you to do is it allows you to have your own IP address. And you don't have to worry about anybody else's. You don't have to worry about any other tenants. Basically encapsulates all your traffic. And the hosts, the hosts that in Azure manage sending traffic back and forth between hosts. But they basically, it's sort of like a VLAN, but it's much more powerful. It scales. A VLAN would not scale for a public cloud. There's not a chance. There's only 12 bits for VLAN ID, and you're going to have more customers than that. There won't be nearly enough VLANs, plus you'd have to worry about other tenants. This way, it allows for complete independence. So you could have two tenants with the exact same IP addressing scheme, and because it's we're using generic routing encapsulation, those IP addresses won't conflict with each other. So we have to create a resource group. We have to create a virtual network to build our network virtualization generic routing encapsulation environment. Within the virtual network, we'll create a subnet for the machines to be on. We can create multiple subnets in a virtual network, as many as you want, whatever your address space supports. It could be IPv4 or v6. And then what I'm going to do is, just to make it a little bit more interesting, I'm going to create a gateway. So I'm going to create a gateway subnet first, and then I'm going to create a point-to-site virtual network gateway. And it will have a public IP address. So then what we're going to do is you're going to actually access the virtual machine through a gateway. So we're going to create like a little gateway, and it's going to install a little VLAN client or VPN client for you. And, you know, I'm making it a little fancy. You don't need to do any of this. I mean, the easy way would be, and I'll show you in a sec, would be to just go into Azure and create a virtual machine, but then it'll be exposed on the internet. Basically, it'll be exposed by default through RDP. So people would be, if they knew the username and password, they'd be able to RDP into the machine. The way I'm doing it, I'm actually not giving the virtual machine that I'm going to create a public IP address. It's just going to have a private address. The gateway itself will have a public IP address. And we're going to access the gateway using certificates, so it's fairly secure. So, I'm going to create a resource group. a virtual network, subnet, gateway, then point-to-site virtual network. I'll actually build a point-to-site virtual network gateway. The gateway will have a public IP address. So each one of these things is a separate object in Azure. So the resource group, the virtual network, subnet, gateway, subnet, point-to-site virtual network. These are all separate objects. And then a virtual machine actually requires a network interface as an object, so we're going to do that, and a storage account to store the operating system drive and the data drive. So believe it or not, all these things are created. Now, I'm going to show you how to do this piece by piece. But if you wanted to, you could just, I'll show you the real easy way and we just build it all for you. But I'm trying to explain to you what's behind it all. So I'm going to switch over to a browser and I'm going to go into Azure. So I'm going to bring up, I'll just bring up a browser. Now I need to share my screen probably, otherwise you can't see what I'm doing. Let me share my screen here. So there we go. So I'm sharing my screen. I'm going to bring up, I'm just going to go into the portal. I'm going to log in with my Microsoft account. You can see I do this from time to time. Put in my secret password. So I've done a little bit of stuff ahead of time. And the reason I did, so what I did, first of all, let me just show you the what the Azure portal looks like. So this is called a dashboard. So what you're looking at is a dashboard. Here's my monthly subscription. I have an MSDN subscription. I think it's about, well, for me, it's $800 a year US as a trainer. And then I get $130 Canadian a month. $100 US is roughly 130 Canadian a month, every month, forever, as long as I'm Microsoft certified trainer. But you guys can subscribe to MSDN if you want. So the MSDN platform subscription I get because I'm a Microsoft trainer, so they just throw that in. But you know, for initially, you guys are just going to go with the free one. So let's just go over this a little bit. So we have the dashboard here. This will take you to your dashboard if you click on here. You got a little menu if you want. You can expand the menu. And what you want to do is when you want to create something, you just go new, and that takes you to the marketplace, Azure Marketplace. So go new, and then you're in Marketplace, and then you can search or you can narrow it down by category. So building a virtual machine would be compute. That's the category. So go, if I wanted to make it really easy, I could just do this. I could go compute and say I wanted to build Windows Server 2016 data center. And I could go like this, and I could say deployment resource manager as opposed to classic, and go create. And then these blades come up, and it would build everything for me. So I could say, well, you know, what do I want to call the machine? You know, I don't know, delete me, because I'm not going to do it this way. Delete me, and then I could pick the different disk types. So SSD is high performance, or you can pick a cheaper one, HDD if you want. And then the username will be the username that you sign in with. So I'm just going to pick student. And then $WORD1234 as the password. So this would be the easy way. And then you could create a new resource group. I'll call it the delete me RG. Delete me resource group. Pick a location. So Azure has these different data centers, different locations. Just pick a location. So there is a Canadian one actually. You can search for it. There. Did I see? There's two in Canada if you're interested. That one's in Canada East is in Quebec, and Canada Central is in Ontario. So I could pick it that way, and then it doesn't like the name because I mistyped it. So try that. So then it's a little happier. And then I could go OK. and then it'll take me on to the next page. And then you can pick the different sizes of virtual machine. So the one with the SSD drive would be roughly $70 a month, and the standard one with the HDD drive is $55. If you want, you can click on View All, and you can see all the different types. So some of them are fairly inexpensive. The A series are a little less expensive, but they would only be suitable for a demo. As you can see, some of them are quite expensive. They're using a lot of resources. Look at this one, G3, 4,000, almost 5,000 a month. Anyways, you can see the A ones tend to be a little cheaper. Here's a, let's see, A0, that's the cheapest one, is $21 a month. So let's go back to recommended. So I could just pick on standard, and I would go select, and then it would take me to the next page, and it would set up all these things automatically, like a storage account, and the virtual network, and the subnet, and in this case, it's going to create a public IP address, so the machine will be accessible through the internet, and then what's called network security group, which will allow for access through RDP, and then there's all sorts of other stuff. You can turn on monitoring if you want, and if I hit OK now, it will go ahead and pick the machine, and it'll build all the objects for me, but I'm not going to do it that way. So I'm going to hit X. I'm going to discard. I'm going to show you how to do it piece by piece. I just don't want you to think that it's that complicated. You could do it just like I did. You fill in the information and bang, you're done. But what I'm going to do is I've already created, so if I go to my resource group, I create a little resource group called INI Services, my company name. So I create a resource group. All you have to do is go add, and then you just give it a name and a location, and you're done. And then you can pin it to the dashboard. So that's all I did. I put in INI Services RG, and then I picked East US, pinned it to the dashboard, and if I go back to the dashboard, I got this right here, INI Services Resource Group. And then what you do is within the resource group, so if I click on the resource group, then you go add, and then what did I do? I added the virtual network. So again, it takes us to the marketplace. So I can just type in virtual network, and there you see it, virtual network. And then and I picked virtual network and then Microsoft. So I did that. That's fairly quick. It builds that fairly quickly. I'll just show you quickly how to do that. So again, you pick the model, Resource Manager Classic. We're all Resource Manager, and it's going to ask you for a name and an address space and a subnet and the subnet address range. And again, everything goes inside a resource group. So you pick the resource group. And again, I pinned that to the dashboard. So that's what I did to create the virtual network. I did all this stuff ahead of time to save time. It's only got a 45-minute demo. The thing that takes a lot of time is the gateway. The gateway takes 45 minutes to build. So let me just show you that. So if I go back into my resource group, you'll see I have there's my virtual network, but I also have a gateway. So gateways take time to create. So if I go in and add a gateway, just to show you how to do it. So virtual network. So I say virtual network gateway. This, again, I'm in the marketplace. So here's the Microsoft one. So they take about 45 minutes to build. So it is an appliance that it installs in Azure that gives you access to the subnet, that virtual network that we're creating. So the gateway I did ahead of time because it takes a while to make. It takes about 45 minutes to make, but we can take a look at it. So if I click on it, so here's my gateway, and essentially what you do is you create a point-to-site configuration. So I'm gonna click on that point-to-site configuration, and you're gonna see the one thing you'll do once the gateway is created, you'll specify an address pool. So those are the addresses that get handed out when you attach to the gateway. So I'm going to be on a 192.168.20 subnet, and it's going to route. And the one thing that I need to do is, so that I can build my VPN client, is I need to upload a root certificate. And the reason for that is what's going to happen is all the clients are going to connect with certificates, and you need so you're going to sign certificates with this root certificate, so they'll be trusted. So you're going to need to upload a root certificate. So that I haven't done ahead of time, so I'm going to show you how to do this for real. So I'm going to leave this page open, and I'm going to show you how to upload a certificate. And I'm going to use PowerShell for that. So the way you do that is I wrote a little PowerShell script. So I'm going to open it up with PowerShell ISE. So here's a little script, and I'll explain to you what it does. It's actually, I don't run it as a script, I run it line by line. So the first thing you got to do, and this is the way to manage Azure through PowerShell, is you need to install the module. And this line here, line 4, will install the module. It actually pulls it from the internet. So you don't need to go anywhere. It's just going to go out on the internet. It's going to download all the Azure RM modules for you and install them on the machine. So if you look here, we go to modules, and it installed all these modules on my, I ran that ahead of time, again to save time, but it installed all these modules on my machine for Azure. You can see there's quite a few. The next thing you got to do is you got to load the module. So line 5 loads the module into PowerShell. So I'm going to run that, and then it loads it. Just takes a minute or two. And I can verify that. I can just say get module and see what's loaded, and there's Azure loaded. And then you have to authenticate to Azure. So the way you do that, the way you log into Azure is you type the command in PowerShell is either there's a login command, there's an alias with login, or you can just say add Azure RM account. So even though I'm logged into Azure with my browser, it's not logged in through PowerShell. So to log in through PowerShell, I have to do this. I'll just run that command, and then it'll prompt me to put in my username and password. And take me to a sign-in page. I'll put in my password. Another thing to note is and then it logs in and tells me my subscription, all this good stuff. The other thing to note is the resource manager commands, they all have RM in them. You notice Azure RM? So it's Azure followed by RM. So what I need to do now is what I want to do is I want to upload the certificate. So I'm going to define some variables first. So my resource group was INI Services RG, and my gateway name was INI Gateway, and my gateway IP address was INI Gateway IP. So I'm just going to run these guys here, and then my certificate, I'll show you where the certificate came from. So I'm just going to go ahead and run those. So I just go like that, click. And then that's all done. So if I type $RG, for instance, you can see that it's defined properly. So the certificates, we're using a utility called MakeCert, which you can download. So this was, I took this from a vendor conference that we did called Cloud and Proud. So it creates a directory, Cloud and Proud, and then we change into that directory, and then we store the certificates there. So the first thing it does is it creates a root certificate, and then it creates a client certificate, and it signs it with the root certificate, and then it encodes the root certificate, puts it in encoding as a CHK, or calls the file CHK root2, and this is the file that I'm going to upload to Azure. So I've already run this. I already threw the certificates in. One caveat when you do this, when you run these make certs, you got to be logged in. You got to run this in PowerShell as the user that you're going to access Azure with, because those certificates are going to go in your local certificate store. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. So I'm logged on this computer as Lionel. So let me just let me just show you. So if I go in a command prompt here, you can see who am I, right? Oh, actually that's who I'm logged in as. So yeah, that's the user ID on this particular machine. But if I go to my certificate store, and do a file, and then add remove snap-in certificates, and go my user account, you'll see that it created it, puts it in your personal store. So it created the root certificate there and the client certificate. So what I'm saying is don't run, I can just cancel it. Don't run the PowerShell ISE. Don't run this as administrator, because then the certificates will go in the wrong place. I'll make this file available afterwards if you guys want it. And this is all extremely well documented on Microsoft's site. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read the file, this chk root, that's 2.cer. Well, I should change the directory. So let me go into the directory so I can find the file. And I'm going to say get content. Well, actually, it passed it, so it should be okay. So it's going to read the file into text, and then it's going to strip out all the stuff that is not applicable. So it's just going to parse the file. So I'll do this first in PowerShell. So let's just make sure it worked. So I'll look at $text, hit enter. So there's the file, but I don't want all of it. I want to parse out the blanks. So the way you do this is you just run a loop for I equals less than $text.length, the length of the file minus 1, increment I by 1, take each line and store it in an array, or take each $text sub I, take each element, and basically it's concatenating it into $certificate text, right? So let's do that. So just move the cursor there and hit F8. So now if I do $certificate text, there it's all nice and clean and all nice and trimmed. And then the big trick here is to upload the certificate using this command to the gateway. So if I look at my gateway now, this guy here, there's no certificate. So then I'll run that command, and hopefully through the magic of PowerShell, it will upload the certificate. So that's the command. So let's make sure. So I got certificate.text. I out that to a string, and I define my resource group, my gateway name, and my client certificate root certificate name, which I defined higher. This thing here. So let's run this command. It's going to take a minute or two. So I'll just go ahead and run that. It's going to take a little while. It's uploading the certificate to Azure right now. I mean, the way I'm showing you is much more complicated, but it's really making use of Azure and having a nice, secure, private environment that you can do things from, as opposed to just depending on an RDP password. There's no way I would have had time to build a gateway, because that would take another 45 minutes. But I just wanted to show you how to load the certificate up to the gateway. So these demos are very time pressed, so I had to do it this way. So there you go. So it uploads the certificate. So now if I go back to the portal and do a refresh, through the magic of PowerShell, there's the certificate. So it's there, which is great. And anything else that want to look at here? I don't think so. So I got the certificate there. So then what I would do next is download the VPN client and then install it on my machine. So that's what I would do next. So I could download the VP client next, or I could build the virtual machine. I'm going to download the client and show you how to authenticate. So I'm going to download the client. This is the easy way, is just to do it from here. The harder way is in PowerShell to show you how to do it. It's a little bit tricky. You have to get the URL. So create a download URL for the client VPN. Simply copy and paste in your browser to download. So this will get the URL. But it's just easier to go like this and download it. So I'm going to download the client. AMD 64. I got 64-bit OS. I'll download the client and then I'll install it on my machine. And then at that point, I should be able to VPN into Azure. So it's ready to go. So I'm going to download it. So there it is. Downloaded it, and then I could just run it. Let me go into Explorer here. Go to my downloads. So it just threw it in here. You can see I did it a little bit earlier. Anyway, I'm going to run this one. So I'll go ahead and watch how easy it is to install. You just go open. And then smart screen saying, I don't trust this. More info. Unknown publisher. Run anyways. Do you really want to do this? Yes. Do you want to install VPN client for INI VNet? Yes. So install the VNet. So the way it looks, if I go down here, is if I click on here, I should see INI VNet. Now, I got to be careful. I'm just wondering if I do this. I just thought about this now. If I do this, am I going to kill the presentation? Will my routing still work once I do this? So I'm going to hold off before I launch the VNet, just in case I lose everybody. I didn't think about that, but I think my routing will be fine. I think it's just going to build a route to Azure, but it's not going to change the default routing so that everything routes through Azure. So I don't think I will lose my WebEx session, but just to be safe, I'm going to go back here. That would be sort of funny. So I got the client, it's all ready to go, but I'm not going to test it till the very end. What I'm going to do now, so these things are called blades, and I'm just going to close off the blade for point to site. And what I want to do now is I want to create a server 2016 machine. So I'm just going to go new, and I'm going to go to compute, and I'm going to pick server 2016, and I'm going to pick resource manager, and I'm going to give it a name. I'll call it INI VM. I'll use the SSD. Student name, I'm going to stick with student. Password, don't tell anyone. $$WORD 1234. It's got to be a certain number of digits, huh? So that was what, 12 digits? Or yeah, was that 12, I think? And then $WORD 1234. But it doesn't really matter because the only way you're going to be able to get to this machine is through my VPN anyway. So even if I have a bad password, a not very secure password, doesn't really matter. I use my existing resource group of INI services. My location, I'll stick with East US because it's got the most features right now. So I'm going to stick with that one. I'll pick a virtual machine size. I'll just go with the standard one just to save time. We don't really browse through right now. So I will select that one. And then for settings, use manage store disk. I'm not going to do anything fancy. I will let it create a new storage account. I will use my existing virtual network. I will use the production subnet. I will not give it a public IP address because I don't need to. So I'll say none. And network security group for filtering. that allow RDP. I'll say yes to that. I could say none, but I'll say yeah. I'll leave that at that. So it allows for RDP, as you can see. So I'll leave that as okay. And no fancy extensions. In a 45-minute demo, no availability sets. I'll turn off monitoring, and I'm going to hit OK. So it's going to build a VM. So it's doing the final verification. We go ahead. You can see SSD drive, student, PA. Well, it doesn't tell me my password, my size. It's going to create a new storage account. It is going to create a new network security group. It will also create an interface as well for this virtual machine. So I hit OK, and then it has to go build. So hopefully this will be done before the demo's over. It's pretty fast. So I'll show you two ways to access the machine. So I'm going to show you the easy way and through the VPN. Well, we'll let this build. We'll let this get created first. So what I'm going to tell you is from the portal, I can RDP right into the machine through the portal. While this is being created, I could show you other stuff. So for instance, if I said new, went to the marketplace there and compute, if I said see all, there's all sorts of stuff you could have created. It's not just Server 2016, but I mean, many, many different types of operating systems. You see a lot of Linux out there, CentOS, Red Hat, Ubuntu, other types of appliances, firewalls, all sorts of stuff, right? Web servers, all sorts of stuff. Azure is a very rich environment to create stuff in. Let's go back to the dashboard here, see what's happening. So it's just deploying it. It's building a virtual machine. It's pretty. You'll see it's pretty fast. It should take like 2 or 3 minutes. It'll be pretty fast. The gateway is about 45 minutes, but this should be relatively fast. Here's some other stuff on my gateway. You can see all the different data centers, and they're all happy. Got some in Australia, some in, is that Singapore, India, Brazil, all around the United States, some in Europe. They're all over the place, more all the time. And while we're looking at it, you can look at my subscription. Just show you what a subscription looks like. So here's my subscription. You can see so far this month I spent $6.81, and that was basically the cost of my gateway. I click on here while we're waiting. I get a breakdown of the charges. I think it's mostly my gateway. So I'll close this blade, close this, go back to the dashboard, still running. It takes a few minutes. I almost should have built another one ahead of time, just so we didn't have to wait for this, just like I did for the gateway. Hopefully we have enough time in our 45-minute demo. I'm going to minimize this for a sec.
I was just thinking, Lionel, if it does take a little bit longer than 2:45, well, we can always give people the option to stay
Okay.
online, and then as a bonus, and then they can watch that finalized there.
Sure. I think I'll be okay. It should build soon. Let's see what the notifications say here. What do they say? Deployment started. But so what'll happen, guys? In the circumstance it doesn't finish in time, you got two ways of accessing it. You can go in through the VPN. So the way you would do the VPN. So I'm gonna go on the edge here. I'm gonna try the VPN. So essentially, you just click. You would access the VPN. You go like this. I'm doing it on Windows 10. and then just open her up, and you just connect, and it uses certificates. So it'll give you a little warning. Now, if we do lose connection here, it was very nice having you guys, but let's give it a try and see what happens. But before I do that, let's just see, is this guy he's still going? Okay, let's just try connecting. So I'm going to try connecting. So click connect to begin. To work offline, click cancel. And if I go into the properties, you can see that it's I can turn on logging. I can turn on sharing. I'm going to go ahead and connect. And then it says CM route VLL will update your routing table. And I'm thinking it's only going to add in a route for Azure and not blow away my default gateway. So let's find out. Establishing secure connection. Looks like I'm in. Hopefully you guys are still there. You guys are alive. Let's check my routing table.
I'm still alive.
Excellent. So if you look at my routing table, you see it added a section to the gateway here. So I got some network, this is some Microsoft address there. And if I do an IP config, I should have a 192.168.20 address. Assuming I type it properly. So I should have an address for the VPN. There it is, 2.14. Or sorry, 20.2. 20.2 is the address. So that's my INI VNet, I should say. So 20.2. So create it. You notice it didn't change the default gateway, so that's why I'm still connecting okay. So that's good. So now the last thing. Let's see how this guy's doing. Yay! Look at that. He's there. So give it a sec. So there would be different ways to connect. So the easy way is you just go into the VPN. You could just connect here through the portal. That would be the easy way, but I'm not going to do that. That's if you had a public IP address, which I don't have. So basically, I need to connect to this device by its private IP address. Let's click on Network Interface, and there's its private address. Is 192.168.10.4. So I should be able to RDP into that. 192.168.10.4. Let me try RDPing into that now that my gateway is open. So just do this, and I said it was 10.4 as student, and put in the secret password when it asked me. And it was PA$WORD1234. And you can see the certificate will be the certificate that I uploaded, or at least trusted by the one I uploaded. And now I've RDP'd into my new server. So I've built a 2016 server, and it'll come up, and then you can go crazy and learn about Docker or all sorts of new features with Windows Azure. So it looks a lot like Server 2012 R2, but it's more sort of Windows 10-ish in the way it gets updates and that sort of thing. So they're sort of moving into the same sort of model for security that Windows 10 has, where you have basically containers, and secure processes run in their own container for additional security. So that's been incorporated into Server 2016, so all sorts of new security features. Anyways, it's just starting up for the first time, and we're logging in. It sort of looks like a Windows 10 interface. It'll come up in a sec. There you go. So there's Server 2016. Looks a lot like Windows 10. Got Server Manager, all sorts of stuff. So now you're ready to go and play with Server 2016, play and learn. But it's in a secure environment, so no public address. There you go, guys. or manage. We can add all sorts of roles and features. But all built on Azure. And you saw that was relatively fast. Tons of stuff. Tons of stuff to play with if you're interested. Device health attestation. Host guardian service. You can see there's multi-point services. You can see that there's some new stuff there. Windows Server Essential on a server operating system. Update services have changed. So anyways, I think that's probably it for today as far as the demo is concerned.
Good. Well, thank you very much for that, Lionel. And again, like I said, any questions, please forward that along. If you're looking for some more in-depth training on what we talked about, whether it be Azure, Windows Server 2016, we have, I think, 4 or 5 new courses on that product itself. So please go to those URLs and you can see what we have to offer for you there. So again, everybody, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Lionel, for that lively presentation, very practical. Hope we retain something from that and we can all get started on our own projects. And I will bid everybody a great afternoon. We hope to see you very soon on an upcoming course or our next webinar. Thank you very much.